This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Buying a car shouldn't eat up your week. That's why Carvana made it convenient. Car buying that fits around your life, not the other way around. You can get pre-qualified for an auto loan in just a couple of minutes and browse thousands of quality car options, all within your terms, all online, all on your schedule. Turn car buying into a few clicks and not a full week's endeavor. Finance and buy your car at your convenience on Carvana. Financing subject to credit approval. Additional terms and conditions may apply.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmersday, July 7th, 2025. On the show today, news. In listener questions, can we talk about Elio? Then in surveys, is Disney planning to sell sporting event vacations? And in our main segment, Jim tells us how the Jack Sparrow and Barbossa figures were added to Pirates of the Caribbean attractions on both coasts on the same day that the Dead Man's Chest sequel was released. Let's get started by bringing in the man who made it through all of last week, and for what? This week? Rude. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It is going well, Len. And speaking of weeks, did a little research before we got started here. And did you know that the concept of a week can be traced back to the Babylonians? They based it on what they observed in the night sky. And so the 7 days of the week are actually paying tribute to the seven celestial bodies, the sun, moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter. And the 7 days of the week key off of, they broke them down into the four phases of the moon. So initially it was a 28-day-based system, and then the Romans came along and like, now wait a minute.
Oh, please.
Yeah, well, we go. And so it's sort of like, we got this guy Julius Caesar, and, we'd like to name a month after him. And so we're going to grab a bunch of days, and that's how we wound up with what we have today. April, 30 days have September, that crud.
And then the Gregorian calendar comes along, and this is my beef, right? Why is October not the 8th month of the year? Like, that just drives me insane.
No, that's it exactly. It's just sort of, the calendar formed by committee.
This is what happens when too many people get involved.
There we go.
Fantastic. All right, Jim, let's do a quick shout out to our subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the show over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, including Robert Spence, Aaron Jenkins, Sharon Monroe, Tom T. Mac McAndrew, Big Cheese, and Velocity Chris. Jim, these are the Disney character personal trainers at Hollywood Studios who just finished getting Olaf ready for the summer meet and greet season. They say that having the shaved ice lady from the Japan pavilion driving a golf cart 50 feet behind Olaf during his morning cardio was an unconventional approach to weight loss, but you really can't argue with the results. True story.
Wow.
Look, everyone is motivated in different ways, Jim. That's all I'm saying.
I guess so. Wow, that's a whole new bend on really cut abs you're talking about there.
I should have used that and didn't. Oh, okay. Darn it. Darn the luck. All right. On to the news, folks. The Disney Dish News is sponsored by DVCRentalStore.com. And Jim, there's a fantastic deal at DVC Rental Store right now for an Animal Kingdom Lodge Kidani one-bedroom villa. 4 nights starting September 27th for just $425 per night. I checked Disney's website, and that's still $200 a night cheaper than Disney's AP rate for that room on those dates. And that's enough money to bail your spouse out of Disney jail for trying to hug the giraffes you'll see from your room. I'm just saying, you know how the money's going to get allocated. Anyway, that's all part of DVC Rental Store's limited time promotion with the best prices of the year. Check them out at dvcrentalstore.com/Disney Dish. All right, the news. Jim, in Walt Disney World, we've got the Eat to the Beat concert lineup announced. And remember, that runs August 28th through November 17th. We've got several new acts, including KT Tunstall, Ben Rector, The Wanted 2.0, Jordin Sparks, Bowling for Soup, and the Beach Boys. And I think I'm excited for the last two because Bowling for Soup does the Phineas and Ferb theme,
yes, they
right?
do. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I've always loved their songs almost in 1985. They're both super fun. But Jim, the Beach Boys are still touring?
I guess. And on the recent sad bit of news in regard to Brian, it's nice that we still have Mike Love with us.
Right. Mike Love is still there. So that's that. But apparently this, I think the lineup of the Beach Boys is basically like a Spanish telenovela that people come and go, and it runs for like 50 years, and it's people, like, there's a cast of thousands in here. I think you and I are the only two people about that age that have not yet been in the Beach Boys.
Well, if you want, I'll make a call to John Stamos and see what I can do. Okay.
Literally. Okay. I mean, fair. All right. In other news, Test Track becomes a Tier 1 Lightning Lane multipass when it reopens July 22nd. So that'll be Test Track, Frozen Ever After, and Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, which means Soarin' moves to Tier 2, which means now you can get a Test Track and a Soarin' Lightning Lane at the same time.
Oh, cool. All right. And they're relatively in the same vicinity. So, all right. That's cool.
Yeah. Exactly. Also, Jim, last bit of news from Disney World. The Central Florida Tourism Oversight District has released details on the location of the Monsters, Inc. door coaster building. And as we suspected, it does go into that parking lot that's currently behind all of the attractions at the studios right now. So a couple of things here, Jim. Number one, that means that this is really going to be a land. And number two, the fact that they've agreed to take out the parking lot, does that free up that entire area for further expansion later on? That's a big parking lot.
Yeah. I mean, Mr. Schul has particularly been eyeballing the triangular chunk of the parking lot that's directly to the left of the Monsters, Inc. building behind, I guess, Rise of the Resistance. And he has some thoughts on that. Might be worth checking out Disney Journey just to see, that's his YouTube channel, to see what he thinks might be going in there.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a Star Wars expansion. It could be further Monsters, Inc. expansion. A lot of interesting things there. Also, Jim, over at Universal, we've heard a second Universal Horror Unleashed location announced. And this one is in Chicago, Illinois. So this is on Chicago Avenue at the intersection with North Halsted. It's across from the Bally's Casino. Construction begins next year and is slated to open in 2027. So, yeah, Universal said that this was going to be an ongoing thing, and they're not wrong.
I have to admit, you've just added a new piece of the puzzle, because when I heard the initial announcement for this, and by the way, they got the old Trib distribution building, and in fact, that was...
Oh, okay.
So it's a beautiful old building. It's a great location. But my concern was that, geez, when Disney did Disney Quest, the second Disney Quest in the entire world opened in Chicago in June of 1999, and it did great business Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the rest of the week struggled. And I was concerned this would be a rerun of that, but now you're the one who's pointing out that the Bally's Casino was right across the way. So, wow, this is the Vegas playbook all over again.
And it's downtown. It's centrally located. It's right where it needs to be. Super popular area on Chicago Ave. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I wish them much success with this project. And again, construction 2026, opening 2027. My only concern is, back in the day, the Disney Quest in Chicago had a primo location on Michigan Avenue. In fact, shared the block with an ESPN restaurant and still couldn't make it. So it's like going to be interested to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, I think having the casino across the street is going to give them a little bit of a built-in audience.
There we go.
Plus the whole area is really good too. All right, cool. On to surveys. Tim Madden sent in an Adventures by Disney survey asking if you'd be interested in a sports-related vacation. And there are two questions. I'll read them to you now. It says, please review the following description of a potential sports-related vacation. When thinking about the trip description, please think about your favorite sport. And in this case, it happens to be the NFL. And the question goes like this. ESPN experiences Champions Days are immersive day trips that allow you to experience your favorite sport in a new way. It includes 1, an exclusive behind-the-scenes tour of the stadium not available to the general public before the game. 2, a visit to the ESPN broadcast booth to see how the game goes from the field to your screen, including time to chat with ESPN talent. 3, some of the best seats in the stadium to watch your favorite sport with premium food and beverages included. And 4, an exclusive game day souvenir not available at the gift shop. So that's one option.
Okay.
ESPN experiences Champions Days. The second one is the ESPN experiences MVP tour, which is an immersive 4 to 6 night multi-city trip that allows you to experience your favorite sport in a new way, led by a dedicated ESPN trip captain It includes some of the best seats in the stadium to watch 2 to 4 games with premium food and beverages, exclusive trips or activities such as on-field experiences, time with ESPN and or sports talent, exclusive souvenirs, visits to relevant and compelling sports destinations in the area, premium lodging, most meals and all transportation, travel between cities by luxury motor coast first-class train or commercial air, and then optional visits to iconic local landmarks. And Jim, so this is an ABD thing. But here's the interesting thing. The same day that we got this survey, Ryan McGee sent in an ESPN survey asking about the same kinds of trips, but for different budgets. And also Ryan's favorite sport is the NFL. So here's what Ryan was pitched. The ESPN Experiences All-Star Escape is an immersive 2 or 3 night single destination trip that allows you to experience your favorite sport in a new way. And it includes an ESPN Experiences MVP Tour captain, some of the best seats to watch the stadium arena to watch 1 or 2 games, exclusive trips or activities such as on-field experiences, so the same thing, time with an ESPN and or sports talent, exclusive souvenirs, visits to relevant and compelling sports destinations in the area, and then premium lodging. So ESPN got the budget 2 to 3 night destination trip, but ABD got pitched the same thing, but 4 to 6 nights. What do you make of this?
I have to admit, this is intriguing. I mean, I say this at somebody who, you throw me a football, I dribble it. But at the same time, the ESPN's Experiences Champions Day, even as somebody who's not a sports fan, that sounds fascinating. Getting a tour of the stadium, getting areas not available to the public, and getting up on the booth. I mean, I think there's a market out for that. The second tier ones, though, the multi-day trips, I guess this is sort of gathering info about whether or not, how big an audience is there out there for that experience. And the fact that both ESPN and Adventures by Disney both put this out at the same time, that's intriguing, Len.
Yeah, and they're both owned by the same company, which is Disney. So, yeah, super interesting. The ESPN survey had 2 other questions. One was, if this offering was available today, how likely would you be, if at all, to book in the next 12 months? And then the next question, of course, the important question is, how much would you be willing to spend on the above vacation per person? Yeah, so I don't know how for like the NFL, they would do 2 to 4 games in 4 to 6 nights. That would be tough. You'd have to do like a Thursday, Sunday game in something like New York where both the Giants and the Jets were hosting home games or something on 2 different nights.
I mean, obviously scheduling would be a challenge. And in fact, what's so funny is just this past week, for example, Hallmark kicked off its Christmas in July thing with an event that was actually held at Fenway Park in Boston. And the hard reality, Len, was you can plan it and you can announce it and you can promote it, and then it can rain.
Right, yeah.
4 innings into the game, it's sorry, we're canceling the game. And there goes your event. So the very thing you were talking about there, you can do everything you want in regard to the schedules, but rain, snow, you just don't know.
I think we'd see a lot of events held in domed stadiums just for that reason.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, but still super interesting. I'm excited to see what they test market this as. And I mentioned this because my BFF, a guy I've known since literally the 5th grade, Andy, we're both Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and the Steelers have a road game this year in Dublin, Ireland. And so Andy's already committed to going.
Wow.
And he's like, we got to go. Okay. I'm like, so Andy and I went on our first road trip ever. So we went in when we were both 16 and he had a car. We went to see the Steelers play in Tampa Bay. And I literally walked into my parents' room at 6 o'clock in the morning and said, does anybody care if I go to Tampa with Andy to watch the Steelers? And my mom said no, but she mumbled it. And then 12 hours later, I had to call her from a payphone because there were no cell phones back then. And I'm like, hey, we got into Tampa. I'm like, she's like, what are you doing in Tampa? I asked you if we could go. Anyway, it was great. We hung out at the hotel. We met a bunch of players. It was super fun. Anyway, so Yeah, so Andy's like pressuring me to go. We'll see what happens. But I would, if ESPN could do it for me, I would definitely look at that.
Well, there we go. But Dublin, you gotta go.
I know. Thinking about it, it takes a long time, but we'll see.
Okay.
Anyway, on to listener questions. Here's one from Veronica about the movie Elio, and this is for you, Jim. And Veronica says, I gather this movie was in development heck for a while, but I remember the original teaser trailer, and I liked the original trailer. And then we saw the trailer for the movie in front of Dogman or Lilo and Switch. And I saw the full trailer with a completely different plot, ? Even my 8-year-old was like, that was not the movie we saw earlier. I don't like being gaslit by movie studios. I saw what I saw. And I wanted to see the first movie, not whatever ended up being released. And so I went and looked, Jim, and Veronica's right about the development. The original release date for this film was early 2024, and I put links in the show notes to both the original and the final trailers. And Jim, those look like those are two completely different movies.
Well,
what happened?
They largely are. And actually, I want to say it's Variety, or was it Hollywood Reporter this week, that given the miserable opening weekend for that, and coupled by it didn't do all that much better in its second weekend, stories come out about the various changes that were made to the storyline and the reasons for that. And this sort of dates back to when Ron DeSantis and Disney were having their tiff in the middle of the Don't Say Gay thing. And evidently Elio fairly early on was a young man who was different. And and that this would have been fairly familiar to the LGBTQ community. And evidently the folks at Pixar, sensing what was going on with Disney and DeSantis, began leaning on the filmmakers that maybe we need to change the direction of this film and make some. I mean, it was done preemptively. Evidently, there were no orders coming down from on high at Disney. But as a direct result, the film changed. And if the people at Pixar are to believe, not for the better. And so now, mind you, nobody at Disney right now is being particularly loud about the disappointing box office. And
yeah, I mean, it could do well in streaming. Lots of
no, that's it exactly. Living in today's world, this film eventually could find an audience on Disney Plus. More to the point, we do have Toy Story 5 coming out next summer. And the notion is that, okay, forgive me for sliding back to our earlier topic, sports, but sometimes it's swing and a miss. Yeah. And with Toy Story 5 coming, which is virtually guaranteed to be a box office smash, it's like, okay, this one got released, didn't do as well in theaters. Let's move on to the next thing. And remember, next year we actually have 2 Pixar films. We have the one about the little girl being inserted into the body of a animatronic beaver, and again, Toy Story. So, in fact, I'd be intrigued to find out if Veronica, what she saw with trailers when she did she actually get to see Elio, or she just looked at the trailer and said, "Nope, not doing that."
I think it was just the trailer. I haven't seen the movie yet.
Okay. But yeah, not a particularly happy story, but let's see what happens further on down the line.
Yeah, it could do well in streaming. We'll see. Okay. All right. From an anonymous DCL Platinum listener who said, I was just listening to your episode where you talked about DCL not giving discounts as any particular cruise date approaches. It's worth noting that Disney has 70,000 cast members in Orlando alone and thus can usually fill up any remaining space with space available discounts to cast members. This saves the public perception of offering last-minute discounts to pack all available cabins, while still offering last-minute discounts to pack all available cabins. Fair. And you've seen some of these deals, right? Some of the cast member deals available. Some of them are actually cheaper than anywhere I've ever lived on a per night basis. Yeah. That's a good point. All right. Here's an email from Ray Augenstein who says, I've always wondered what the connection, if any, the 1982 opening of Epcot had with the 1982 World's Fair in Knoxville. We lived 100 miles from the fair, and I got to visit 3 times. The fair ran through October of 82, and Epcot opened in October of 82, so they overlapped for 1 month. And so, yeah, I went back and looked at this, actually. So there were a couple of interesting things here. Mm-hmm. The icon for the 82 World's Fair was the Sun Sphere, which is still there. Drive by it when you go through Knoxville. But did you know that touchscreen computers debuted at the 82 World's Fair?
I did not know that. Oh, okay.
There we go. And then Epcot had them later.
Okay. Well, I always felt kind of bad in regard to Knoxville's timing. Because, again, they opened the spring of 82, and with Disney heavily hyping The Future Begins October 1st, 1982, mm-hmm. they never quite got the attendance that previous World Fairs had gotten, largely because a lot of folks were like, I'm waiting for Epcot.
Yeah, makes sense. Mm-hmm. All right. An email from Michelle Rhoda, who says, I loved last week's podcast mentioning of Sum of All Thrills. Mm-hmm. My family may or may not have tried to design roller coasters to make one of us sick. Whom among us? Whom among us, Michelle?
Okay.
My idea for Connections Cafe is that it could be used similarly to a surgical center's waiting room. Mm-hmm. You check in with the elderly desk person who asks if you're waiting for a lightning lane or a dining reservation. And then you can sit in the college union seating to rest. And when you're 10 minutes away from your time, the desk person will put your family name up on the board with typos and also announce your family name, but of course pronounced incorrectly. Oh, and the font is really small on the board, and the announcement will be just softer than the sound of the air handlers in the building, so no one can hear them.
It sounds like somebody spent entirely too much time
in a hospital. Okay. And so I said that to Michelle, but it made me think of this idea, right? I love the idea, but let's move it to another park. Okay, here we go. You ready? Ready for my idea?
Okay.
A villains-themed restaurant where it's clear they don't really want you there, they just need the money. So they misspell everyone's name and they mumble when calling for your reservation. Okay, but the villain's assistants are the waitstaff, and they're super excited to be there. They love seeing the guests, and they're super efficient. And that all of that drives the villains crazy. So when your server says, "Can I get you all something to drink?" there's a villain behind them saying, "Can I get you all something to drink? You fool! Next time just bring them the poison. The poison for Cusco. The poison chosen especially to kill Cusco. Cusco's poison." Like, that's a concept we could get behind, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
The villains assistants are just like super perky and like trying to do a really good job, right? The villains are like, "Can I get you something to drink?" Yes, I think that's what we should do here.
That would be great. That would be great.
All right, last email's from Peter Stabenfeld, who says, I listened to the last episode, and that article on the Hampton Inn was really interesting. I actually work at a Hampton Inn as a side gig. Mm-hmm. I'll say we have a lot of repeat guests because they know the product they're going to get, and our free complimentary breakfast is a huge perk that keeps sports teams coming in. So there you go.
Okay.
All right, there we are. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim tells us how Disney got the Barbossa and Jack Sparrow animatronics into Pirates of the Caribbean in time for the Dead Man's Chest premiere. We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Dogfish Head Craft Brewery. The Grateful Dead and Dogfish Head have gotten the band back together with the release of Grateful Dead Juicy Pale Ale, a light-bodied pale ale brewed with sustainable Kernza grains, granola, and heaps of good karma for a refreshing brew that's music to your taste buds. Available nationwide. Visit dogfish.com to find Grateful Dead Juicy Pale Ale in your neck of the woods. Dogfish Head Craft Brewery is located in Milton, Delaware. Please drink responsibly.
Oh, tasty high note. Oh, hi, don't mind me. I'm practicing my new baritone sax. I just heard PayPal's paying for people's stuff every day for 100 days, and there's 10 million up for grabs. All you have to do is use PayPal checkout online. So there's never been a better time to buy a few things off the old wish list. Like this leaf blower! PayPal could pay for your purchase. The Great PayPal Checkout.
No purchase necessary ends July 18th. See official rules at paypal.com/thegreatpaypalcheckout/terms. Participating merchants only must use PayPal checkout online. Coverage of up to $100 and eligible purchases per card.
I'm 32, juggling family, working full-time, and earning a bachelor's degree. At University of Phoenix, I earn career-relevant skills with every 5-week course. Skills I can use now, not just after graduation.
Earn skills in weeks, not years. Visit phoenix.edu.
And we're back. All right, Jim, Pirates of the Caribbean, my favorite Disney franchise of all time.
Okay.
And I remember when they put these animatronics in, and it was controversial for a couple of reasons, right? Completely changed the ride.
It did. But the interesting thing, as we'll talk about in today's show, it wasn't the first time they actually changed the ride. In fact, the change in 1997, where, for example, remember how it used to be after the auction, there was what, quote unquote, the rape scene, where the animatronic figure, the male figures chased the women?
Yes.
And how in 97 they changed that to the food scene, where they actually reversed the positions of the men and the women, and now the men were running ahead of the women, but they were holding platters of food, and the women were then beating them with brooms for stealing the food.
Yes.
I mean, that's the thing about Pirates. It's an attraction. Again, we have this movie series that feeds off of the attractions, and the revolving door went both ways. Though, worth noting that we would not, in fact, have the Pirates of the Caribbean film series if it were not for the Tower of Terror TV movie from 97.
They're working on another one, right?
Well, yeah. In fact, Scarlett Johansson, this officially got announced back in 2020, that Scarlett Johansson was going to star in and produce a Tower of Terror film for Disney. In fact, at that time, she had lined up Taika Waititi, the director of Thor Ragnarok and Thor Love and Thunder, not to mention the wonderful What We Do in the Shadows TV series. But yeah, the two of them are working together on it. And so she's out doing publicity this week for Jurassic World Rebirth. And the question came up, hey, what's going on with the Tower of Terror movie? And Scarlett effectively said, well, we're still working on the script because, to be honest, the attraction doesn't have a whole lot of story.
It's got 90 seconds of backstory. There's not a lot going on there.
So it's been kind of a tough nut to crack. And now what's ironic about this whole situation is that in the early 1990s, I don't know how many of you would remember, there was a series over on Nickelodeon called Are You Afraid of the Dark? And it was a children's horror anthology series. It was created by DJ McHale and Ned Candle. And Disney eyeballed this hard because Disney just doesn't do horror. And it's a fairly lucrative field, and it was just the notion of, dang, that's out there. And then to add insult to injury, in that same window of time, Fox Kids began doing the Goosebumps TV series.
Right.
And we've talked about, actually, on, I want to say, one of our Patreon shows about the Goosebumps, what was it, the Horrorland that they did at Disney MGM. The Horrorland Freight Show. And Disney actually bought the theme park rights to this because, again, they wanted something kid-friendly that was horror-based in the park. So when Are You Afraid of the Dark ends its run on Nickelodeon, Disney reaches out to DJ McHale and says, hey, we would love to work with you on something. You got any ideas? And DJ is like, well, to be honest, yes. You opened an attraction in the parks a couple of years ago, the Tower of Terror, that I think would make a great movie for kids. And what you get?
Just the way you phrased that is really funny.
There we go. And it was just one of these notions where, really? Oh, okay. And let's work together on that. Now, Disney, as they started out, said, well, okay, here's the rules. We had to pay CBS and Carol Serling, that's the widow of Rod Serling, a large amount of money to be able to get the theme park rights to the name Twilight Zone. So this would be Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. We're not willing to do that for whatever you want to do here. So it would have to just be the Tower of Terror. And I bring that up, Len, because that's from friends who work at the studio. Evidently, Scarlett Johansson and the folks who were developing the Tower of Terror movie that Disney's looking to, they buried the needle in the exact opposite direction. That evidently this thing will actually lean into the opening narration of the original Twilight Zone series.
Well, Scarlett Johansson's version.
Yeah, the whole notion of you traveling to another dimension, a dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind, and yada, yada. And the notion is that whoever gets trapped in the Hollywood Tower Hotel has to overcome these dimensional challenges before they can escape. So, and that may be another reason they're having trouble with the script.
I mean, either way, CBS and the estate of Rod Serling still have to say that the attraction was based in part on the TV series.
Oh, absolutely.
So anything that is a derivative of the tower itself, there's that you can link it back to the original series. I mean, it's a little bit of a tenuous thing, but you could draw that line, and certainly some lawyer would be willing to advance that argument, I'm sure.
Oh, certainly, especially today. But anyway, long story short, DJ McHale collaborates with Disney. They get Steve Guttenberg and Kirsten Dunst to star in this thing. The Tower of Terror movie debuts on ABC in October of '97. It's actually a special 2-hour-long episode of The Wonderful World of Disney, and does really well in the ratings, Len. In fact, so well that for the next couple of years, and we're talking the late 90s, early into the early 2000s, it becomes a perennial. It's something that gets trotted out for Halloween on ABC, on the Disney Channel, on ABC Family. And what's fascinating about this, Len, is that prior to this, in fact, just after Aladdin came out in 1992, Ted Elliott and Terry Russo, who wrote the screenplay for that, were approached by Disney, and it's like, what do you want to do for your follow-up project? And, they were like, oh, well, we'd like to propose doing something really unusual. The way you guys work, and you have a hit movie, and you then make an attraction, and it goes into the parks. We'd like to invert this formula. We'd like to take something that's already established in the parks and do a movie. And Disney's like, really? Which one? And it's like, and they're like, well, we were thinking Pirates of the Caribbean. And the studio immediately like, no. I mean, there's no...
Really? They said no?
Well, they said there's no story. I mean, where's the story? The pirates arrive in town, they sack it, they burn it down. There's no story. And so...
Yeah, but what's their motivation for doing it?
Well, this is the thing. But Disney just out of hand says no until the Tower of Terror movie starts consistently doing top ratings over on ABC, and again, ABC Family, and the Disney Channel. And suddenly...
Oh, okay. And they're like, oh, kids like the spooky. Okay,
there we go. And so now we get to the point where Disney comes around to Ted and Terry's way of thinking. It's like, all right... if we did that, if we did movies based on theme park attractions, how would we do that? And on the second half of the feature today, we'll not only get into what happened there, but we'll also get into why the first Pirates of the Caribbean, the subtitle is wrong.
Okay, I have a question about this, so let's do the ad break, and then we'll do this.
Okay.
All right, we'll be right back.
Going on vacation? We're here for it. With kids who turn a back seat into a courtroom drama over whose tablet is louder, whose charger is faster, and why watching the same cartoon for the 100th time is a human right? Yep, we totally have vehicles to handle that. Because whether it's a road trip or a business trip, where your flight's delayed, your phone's at 2%, and your dinner, whatever's open, yeah, here for that too. Enterprise, we're here for it.
Culture evolves at the speed of light. Just like your financial needs. When it comes to your money, Credit Karma keeps you in the know and ahead of the game. You can count on Credit Karma to keep up with your financial needs as they evolve. We'll help you monitor your progress and give personalized recommendations so you can make strides towards your goals and find your way to money. Intuit Credit Karma. Karma you can count on. Download the app today.
Buenos dias! Café Bustelo espresso-styled iced coffee is hitting refrigerators with a cold front that'll sweep through your senses. So keep the coffee pours long and the cool sip slow. Café Bustelo está aquí.
All right, so Jim, real quick, whose idea was it? So I get the original concept for Pirates of the Caribbean was, I guess, straightforward Pirates movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Whose idea was it? Was it Disney's idea or Ted and Terry's idea to say, you know what? They're ghosts.
Well,
whose idea was that?
Very interesting that you asked that, because we talked just a moment ago about that redo in 1997. And again, what everybody talked about for that redo again is the rape scene becomes the food scene. But there was another thing that, I want to give credit where credit is due here. This is Imagineer, now themed entertainment professional Bob Baranek, who came up with this concept. And to Bob's way of thinking, there'd always been an aspect of Disneyland's version of Pirates of the Caribbean that had bothered him. And that's, think about it, you come down the waterfall and you're in those treasure caves filled with all of these skeletons who were clearly pirates. And then you go into the scenes where they arrive in town, they sack the town, they set fire to it, and then you chug up that hill and you go back to the load area. And nobody ever talks about, well, what's the deal with the treasure? And what's the deal with the skeletons?
Yeah.
And so Bob was like, I feel like we have to circle back around to that. And what was interesting is just the year previous, Lynn, the World of Motion had shut down at Epcot. So suddenly they were all, and remember, that attraction had 130 animatronic figures. So there was suddenly all these figures up for grabs. And so Bob, for example, took a couple of them. And so for the first time ever, when you float by the fort, between the fort with its cannons and the Wicked Wench, suddenly there are actually Spanish soldiers popping up behind the parapets because Bob's grabbed a couple of them and put them on rigs. So now people actually pop up. Where you've previously heard Paul Frees's voice, now you see the characters are supposedly doing that voice. But at the same time, if you remember that scene in the World of Motion, where it's the world's first traffic jam, and you remember this one guy who's dealing with a really stubborn zebra, and he's pulling on the rope, and
he's trying to pull the zebra. Pull the rope. Yeah.
Okay, so Bob looks at that and goes, "Oh, I have an idea." And so he actually grabs two animatronic figures out of that scene and puts them at the very bottom of the load hill. You've come out of the scenes where the Pirates of the Caribbean is on fire, and you're about to go clack, 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 clack up the hill to the load-unload area. What Bob decides to do is, first, at the very bottom of that, he puts two pirates, in fact, takes the gentleman who was pulling on the rope and stages it in such a way that it looks like these two guys have a giant bag filled with swag and treasure that they're now dragging out of the treasury of the town they've just sacked. And it's like, okay, so you have that at the bottom of the hill, but as you proceed up the hill, halfway to the top, suddenly to your side, there's two skeletons who are wearing the exact same clothing with a now collapsed bag of treasure. And the notion is they never escaped. They never made it out.
They never got out. Okay, yeah.
Because the treasure was cursed.
Oh, so 97 is when we got the idea of the treasure being cursed.
There we go. There we go.
Wow. Literally, we're taking one of the last scenes thrown into Pirates of the Caribbean and basing the entire movie around it.
There we go. There we go. And so here's the thing. Disney decides in the early 2000s, all right, let's try this attraction-based movie idea. So they actually put three of them in development. They put a Country Bear movie into development. And basically, let's be honest, the Country Bear movie is the Blues Brothers in fursuits. You were getting the band back together. Only instead of Jake and Elwood, you've now got all these outfits that were made by the Hanson Creature Shop. On the other hand, you have The Haunted Mansion, which, by the way, directed by Roger Allers, who was one of the co-directors of Disney's original Lion King, produced by Don Hahn, the producer of that same film. But two guys who really weren't all that experienced with horror. And the other thing is, to be honest, Disney kind of based this whole film on the sort of movies Abbott and Costello made in the 40s. Put a comedian in an environment with scary stuff and hilarity ensues. Right. So, but in the middle of the pile there is this straightforward Pirates of the Caribbean movie, which at that time, the storyline of this thing, Will Turner breaks Captain Jack Sparrow out of prison because he needs Jack Sparrow help to go rescue his fiancée, Elizabeth Swann, who has been kidnapped by, and at this point the character is known as Captain Blackheart. And Sparrow is willing to go on this quest because he and Captain Blackheart have a history that there was a mutiny, and Captain Blackheart took the Black Pearl away from Jack Sparrow. So, but it's a straightforward pirate movie. There's no supernatural element at all. And Jerry Bruckheimer, who winds up producing this for Disney, just looking at the script, and it's like, this, I don't, there isn't anything special about it. Yeah,
it's a pirate movie. Okay.
I need a hook. So he actually calls Ted and Terry in because they've done a number of rewrites, and Ted and Terry are the ones who are like, have you been on Pirates since Disney redid it in 97? Because they've got this cursed treasure idea that I think would really work for this movie.
I can't. So, and what does Bruckheimer say?
Well, Bruckheimer's, no, that's great. That's solid. Now, on the other hand, Michael Eisner, who by this point, Pirates doesn't actually begin shooting till October of 2002. And by then, Country Bear has opened and closed. It cost $35 million and only made 16 at the box office. And Eisner, on the heels of this, actually tries to shut down production of Pirates because it was like, whoa. Oh, I know.
Yeah, the public doesn't want theme park.
There we go. But here's the thing: they have already started construction on the Treasure Cave on the Disney lawn. That's in Soundstage 2. It takes them 5 months to build it, Len. When the set's complete, they flood it with 5 feet of water. So Eisner's like, oh crap, I can't turn this thing off.
It's too late.
It's too late.
So let me ask you this question: when they came up with the idea of the cursed treasure, this was prior to shooting.
Yep.
Had they already cast Johnny Depp at this point, or did they?
Well,
so this was what, in 2000?
They initially went after Matthew McConaughey.
Really?
They were thinking more along the lines of a Burt Lancaster type take on the character. And so, Johnny was the default position, and quite famously, Johnny did his research and decided that, well, if you look at pirates back in the 1600s, but they were the rock stars of their era, and that's when he decided to model Jack Sparrow on Keith Richards. And
I mean, one of the great acting performances of our lifetime.
Oh, no doubt. But at the same time, picture this: you're Michael Eisner, and you're sitting there back at Disney Studios, and the dailies start to come in. And
let's see what Johnny's up to. You're like, oh God.
And at the same time, Pirates cost 4 times what Country Bear did. And at the same time, it now has a supernatural element, which means that your Haunted Mansion movie, which, by the way, is arriving in theaters only 4 months after Pirates, suddenly it's like, okay, crud. This could be a disaster. And so Eisner feels like, I got to do something.
Yeah.
And finally, he decides 6 months out, I know how to fix this. This movie needs a subtitle. And it's like, what?
Yeah, that's going to help. Okay, go ahead.
So Michael approaches marketing, and it's like, okay, from this point forward, it's not just the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And by the way, you can today, go and see the initial Pirates of the Caribbean posters. In fact, I want to say the catchphrase for the movie at that point was "prepare to be blown out of the water." But it says just Pirates of the Caribbean. There is no subtitle for the posters that went out in November, December of 2002. But Eisner says, okay, from this point forward, it's Curse of the Black Pearl. And folks who are working on the movie, it's like...
I know you're going to say the objection, but I guarantee you I know what it is. Go ahead.
Well, no, that's the thing. The thing that's cursed is the Aztec gold.
Exactly. The Black Pearl isn't cursed.
Yeah. But Eisner's response is, well, look.
Whatever. You know what? They're tourists.
What he actually cited was, well, look, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, nobody knows who the hell the Phantom Menace was. No, Curse of the Black Pearl. That's what we're going with.
All right, fair. He was right.
Just figured he's the CEO. Okay, we'll do it. But anyway, all of this stuff coalesces, and the company is terrified, but Pirates of the Caribbean does finally get into theaters in July of 2003, and wonders of wonders, it's a box office smash. And you have to understand that Disney already is having a great summer because Finding Nemo would come out in May. And these two films actually wind up being the number 1 and the number 2 grossing film for all of that year in North America. And now Michael Eisner is, oh my God, it worked. And not only that, people, because of the way it ended, they want to know when's the sequel.
Yes. 100%.
Well, okay. Sure, we will make a sequel. More to the point, they immediately turned to Ted and Terry, and it's like, you guys figured out what made this work. You guys write the sequels. And so they go off and begin working.
I need you to go back on this ride 100 times.
Yeah. And actually, in a weird sort of way, they're grateful to Michael Eisner because that was the other thing, putting his hand on the movie. At one point, there was a scene in the original film where Will Turner and Captain Jack Sparrow are making their way into the cave at Ile de Morto, and they actually go down a waterfall. And Eisner was like, no, that's too close to the ride. No, don't put that in there. That'll take people out of the movie. And so Ted and Terry were like, oh, cool, that's great. We now have something else from the movie to put in the sequels.
Exactly. Because when this thing hits, people are going to want to see that.
But that's the thing. Yeah. Now and we'll get to this in the second installment of the series, but this is where it gets fascinating because at this point, Len, the revolving door starts to move in both directions, that we get elements of the ride going into the movie, but we also get, and this is a first, a ride suddenly incorporating stuff from a brand new... Think about it. The original Pirates of the Caribbean opened in 1967. And now here we are, 40 years later? And suddenly...
new canon. Yeah.
Captain Jack Sparrow and Barbossa are coming into the ride. But we'll get to that in the next installment of this series.
All right, so Jim, let me just before we close, say do a couple of quick things here. Mm-hmm. Number one is this: I think I've told you on the show before, but when I was sitting in the theaters watching the original Pirates of the Caribbean movie, I was halfway through it and thought it was the best movie, one of the best movies I'd ever seen. Like, it was so spot on.
Oh yeah,
that I was halfway through the movie. I was excited to see how they were going to wrap it up, and I thought Johnny Depp should have won the Oscar that year for actor in a leading role. I will bet you right now, Jim Lunch, you cannot name any other nominee from 2004 or who actually won that award.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And I would argue also the same thing. That film was so enjoyable. There wasn't a misstep in the thing.
No. And I mean, I've probably watched that movie 20 or 30 times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey Rush's work is Barbossa.
Exactly. God, he's so good. Every line is delivered exactly right. There's not a wasted scene. No. There's not a wasted bit of script. It is the perfect film. All right. Anyway, Sean Penn won for Mystic River in 2004. Johnny Depp was nominated. Ugh. And if Depp didn't win, at least Bill Murray lost in translation, which is another wonderful. Scarlett Johansson was in that too, right?
Yeah. That's it exactly.
Lovely, lovely little movie. Okay, I could have seen Bill Murray winning it, but Sean Penn over Johnny Depp, no. I think you know how like PricewaterhouseCoopers counts all of the ballots. I think that year they must have gone with a subcontractor, like the Huey Long Accountants and Company.
There we go.
Anyway.
Excuse me, I think you dropped a pile of the ballots over here.
Exactly. Anyway, all right, folks, that's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia. We're posting exclusive shows every week. Our latest show is a review of the new Test Track 3.0 and Astro Orbiters with Christina Harrison. On next week's show, we're going to finish up the story on Pirates of the Caribbean, and we did manage to get Don Hahn and Chris Merritt rescheduled for an upcoming show this month on their new book about Disneyland, so look forward to that. You can find more of Jim at JimHillMedia.com and more of me, Len, at TouringPlans.com. We are produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey and David Gray, whose abstract sculpture titled The Barn Doors of Our Mind will be on display with over 24 life-size cows in the fields of Old Sturbridge Village, all part of Cowfest 2025, running through September 28th in Old Sturbridge Village in beautiful downtown Sturbridge, Massachusetts. While Eric and David are doing that, please go on to iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We'll see you on the next show.